Genesis chapter 37, ESV version, verse 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. Right, so the story, we remember Jacob, this is where he grew up. Then he had to flee because of the whole story with Esau and the blessing he stole from Esau via his mother. His mother would died by now. Okay, and he is living then in this, now back then in the land of Canaan, the land of his grandfather's sojournings, Abram, where God sent him. So at least, again, this is where he's supposed to be, and this is where he's at. So it paints us a picture where he is living. Sojournings, in other words, it's not a temporary, a permanent thing that they had. It was not, the land didn't belong to them as of yet. They're just sojourning there in the land, and which ultimately would basically be kind of the way he is, but he had a little bit more of it, and then he's, as we'll see later on, going to leave it all. So he's in the land of Canaan. So I don't want to always repeat myself, but you need to remember when the story was written. And so the people in the land moving on to Canaan, so with the Jews in the desert on their way to Canaan, the land of Canaan, being reminded that this is where their forefathers lived. Not only Jacob, their sons, the 12 sons, the tribes, but as well Isaac, and ultimately as well through this history, Abram. So a reteaching them of their history, so they'll know the background of why they are going to that land. Why not the different land? Why that land? Verse 2. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Okay, so here it states that this is generations of Jacob. So this is just an important moment for all 13, 14 chapters that follows after this. Right, to remind us, this is not ultimately the story of Joseph. This is the story of Jacob. These are the generations of Jacob. Okay, so Jacob, and therefore all his sons, they are the focus of it. Yes, Joseph is going to play the major role here. So yes, the most of the stories there will be about Joseph. But ultimately this fact that it's about Jacob and the generations of Jacob explains as well why, for example, we're going to get other chapters interjected concerning Judah, for example, well, in a big way, Judah. Right, then the verse goes on speaking about the age of Joseph. So he's 17 years old, and what he was doing, he was pasturing his father's flocks with the others. So he was not left out, he was working, right? He was a beloved son, but he was working at the same time. He was pasturing the flock as like the rest. And now it's going to give us an explanation of why ultimately he's not going to be with them far away from home pasturing the flocks. The reason starts off why? Because he's going to be a tell-all. He's going to gossip about his brothers, or he's going to go and tell his father stories about his brothers. Not all his brothers, but the brothers that were born to, the 4 brothers that were born to Bilhah and Zilpah, the slave girls of Rachel and Leah, right? So we don't know exactly what they did something wrong. And so lo and behold, what's going to happen? Joseph is going to tell his dad about it. Right, so he brought bad reports. So the fact that it mentions bad reports, that doesn't imply that he lied, right? All it implies is that bad things that they did, he went to tell their father. Okay, that's all. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. So yes, we know by now that Jacob loved Joseph more than, and Benjamin ultimately, but this is now about Joseph, so Benjamin's name is not mentioned here. And Benjamin was born after Joseph, and so we do know that he loved Joseph more. But from what we've seen thus far, it always implied the reason for that is because of his love for Rachel. For Rachel, more than his love for Leah. Remember from the previous chapters, we know that he loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. He was never in plan to marry Leah, but that was his Laban's lying and giving him Leah first, right? You can go and watch the other videos to see that play out. Okay, so and from the names of all the sons, we've seen how Leah called the sons and named them, and then every time these names basically reminded them of, Jacob's hatred towards her, non-love towards her. So everyone knew, or what we've been told up to this stage is like, this would logically seem the reason that he loved Joseph more is because he loved Rachel more, right? And Joseph is Rachel's son, like Benjamin. And the brothers knew this. But now in this verse it says that the reason is because he is the son of his old age. Sure, Jacob was older than when Joseph was born than for the birth of the other sons, except for Benjamin, that is, as I've already mentioned. So, yes, that is true. He was then born later, so older age. And yes, I think we know this sometimes happen. Fathers, as they grow older, and there's like this child being born later into the family, it's like the father is maybe a bit more mellowed, right? He's been through it all already by now, so he kind of more easy on the son, which might imply or look to the others that he loves the son more, right? These kinds of things happen. I think we all know it. Okay, so yes, there can be that, but this is not what we have it's kind of unexpected in this verse, stating this here. Okay, so why might this be? Why is this mentioned? Why not mention of the fact that, well, actually Joseph was more loved because, he loved Rachel more, as we've seen all the way up till now. Why state in such a way? So both things true, but the one truth is lifted out here and given as an excuse rather than the other truth. Okay, so this is not a lie. This is just that there are two truths, both valid reasons. Okay, in the previous chapter, this was the focus. The focus were on the naming of the sons. Why were the sons named? Because of this. Okay, so that was the focus there. Therefore, that was mentioned, the love for Rachel. But in this chapter, this is not going. The other truth of Joseph being born late, that truth is going to be mentioned because this fits in with the story here. So it's not a lie. It's not, in that sense, an unexpected. It fits better in with the storyline as giving. Because I think Moses writing this down, was trying to show that that Jacob, by using this, is not trying to play the other boys or to play on their feelings of their relationship with their mother and his relationship with their mother here. Okay, so not to make them hate Joseph more because of his hatred towards Leah, right? But so in a certain sense, Moses is trying to take that sting out here. Okay, he's just saying to show, but this is a logical kind of a thing. Fathers do love children that were born in an older age. Okay, and so the boys, the sons, had therefore no excuse for their actions, right? So Moses, in writing this in this way, is trying to take that away from the sons, to have the reader ultimately not feel empathy for the brothers for trying to kill him or selling him off. They were wrong. That's that. And Moses, as a writer, is making no qualms about this. They were wrong. Okay? So to take any kind of subjective or objective reason away from him. Okay, I know these days in movies they like to make to show the evil people like Thanos or whatever and killing the half of the population in an existence kind of idea. I know it's nonsense. There's no Thanos, right? But in the movie that is there. So and the excuses, because he was like actually caring about because people would. The nature was destroyed kind of idea, right? It's like that same story in the Noah movie coming around. Okay, so yeah, that is something that is done these days in movies. Okay, sorry for that interruption. It's just a Russian lady asking here for a photo to be taken, so I could use my Russian here. Okay, to get back to the story. So, Moses is trying to take away from Jacob, from the sons, from any kind of, right? So they're not trying to play this Thanos role that you kind of feel sad for the guy, right? Or kind of, right? This is not what Moses is trying to achieve here. He wants to take all of that away. He wants to take away any empathy for the brothers in doing this. Like Joseph did nothing wrong. The brothers were just in the wrong. Okay. So if it was stated that because he loved him more because of Rachel, then they might have they actually had a reason to kind of hate him. But since it's just because he was born in an old age, and that's not Joseph's mistake, right? How could Jacob make it? That's not Jacob's mistake. It's not Joseph's mistake. No one is at fault here. Okay, and that is the reason why he loved him, and therefore there's no base reason given for the brothers to hate Joseph. Okay, they are going to hate him later on for other reasons, and we've already seen the fact that of Joseph bringing the stories. But yeah, again, so the point is, there's no basis. Moses is trying to take that empathy away from. Okay, so let's continue. In the making of the robe of many colors, yeah, I think you've all seen Joseph in the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat by Andrew Lloyd Webber, right? So we've seen lots of what's the word for it? Yeah, there's lots of this robe. I mean, we don't have no idea how the robe looked like, right? It's not to say it's a robe of like the rainbow or something like that kind of idea. A robe of many colors. We have no idea, but he had a special robe. Okay, and why this is mentioned is because this robe is going to be the thing that will then show that Joseph was killed by wild animals. This is as well why the robe is mentioned. Okay, yes, it's mentioned for the fact that this is something that Jacob did wrong, not Joseph. Jacob did wrong. Okay, so giving an excuse to or for the brothers then to see, but then again, it's not so much to say that the fact of the matter is that they're trying to say, okay, this robe is then the proof of something. Yes, it's a proof that he loves him more, and he loves him more because he's a son of old age. So again, it's something special is done. It's not to say, okay, so because he got this robe, therefore he is better, therefore Father loves him more, therefore we have a reason to. So the reason why, okay, so you need to understand this, okay. The reason why it's stated here that he loved is because he's the son of the old age. And because he's the son of the old age, he loved him more. And it's logical that he would love him more. The brothers ought to understand that. And then logically he made them this robe. Okay, so the robe per se ought not to be such a big thing. It ought to be kind of a thing that they understood. Yes, our father, when he was old, he had, and we love our father, he loved us and whatever, so he's our brother, so we ought to love. And so we ought to not have a problem with the fact that he made him the special robe. We ought not to have a problem with that. Okay? But they had. So again, the whole point is that ultimately even the robe is not the reason for them to hate. This is something they ought to have understood. So their hatred is something in themselves, something that's unrelated. Okay? So yes, foundations being laid for ultimately their hatred. But this ought to be understood by them. Ought to be. But it wasn't. So their hatred of them is unfounded. And this is what Moses is trying to show.